Oh, it wasn't the Dolphins' night on Sunday Night Football. They fall to the Eagles, second loss of the season. Now 5-2 on the season are the Miami Dolphins. 31-17, the final in this one. Final score doesn't exactly indicate how close it was. The Dolphins were down 24-17 and driving before Tua Tagovailoa threw an interception. But credit the Eagles. They contained this high-powered Dolphins offense all night. Far and away, the worst game of the season for the Dolphins, and in particular, the Dolphins offense. The rushing game was shut down, and at times, the passing game excelled, but only to the tune of scoring one offensive touchdown. I would imagine season-low outputs in just about every statistical category there. You see the stats on Tua. 23 of 32, 216 yards, one touchdown, but a costly interception as well. The running game just could not get going. -7 rushing yards in the first half for the Dolphins. The Eagles had Mostert and the rest of the Dolphins running backs bottled up the entire evening. Mostert busted out some runs in the second half to get to 9 carries for 45 yards, but did not score a touchdown. Tyreek Hill, you still can't stop him no matter what. He had one touchdown, 11 receptions, 88 yards. And I think he would tell you, too, he's got to make the catch on that costly drop where he could have walked into the end zone in the second half. But all in all, a productive game for the Cheetah as well. 88 yards, one touchdown, but not enough. It was not the Dolphins' night tonight on Sunday Night Football, and they suffer their second loss of the season. Meanwhile, the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, 23 of 31 for 279 yards, 2 touchdowns, and the 1 interception. DeAndre Swift had a productive game with 15 carries and 62 yards, did not score a touchdown. A.J. Brown, big day, his 5th straight game of 100-plus receiving yards, 137 with a touchdown. He was a menace for the Dolphins all game long, who were a little banged up in the secondary, and it showed. Now, we got to vent a little bit. That's what happens. It can be tough. When your team loses, it can be tough. But I need your one-word reaction to tonight's game. It was kind of a roller coaster ride. You're down 24-17. And even at the end of that first half, you really felt like the Dolphins didn't play particularly well, but you get the late touchdown from Tua to Tyreek Hill. You're only down 1 at the halftime break, 1 score, 7 points, and it never really materialized into the Dolphins' night. So your one-word reaction for tonight's game, I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go frustrating because at times the Dolphins looked like they were there, and at other times it just looked like it was not their night. So it was a frustrating loss, but I will use that twofold as I'm optimistic that this Dolphins team can learn from this defeat and bounce back. Did they look a step slower than a good team in the NFC and the Eagles? Yes, absolutely. Did it look like the Eagles defense manhandled the Dolphins offensive line? Sure. But this Dolphins team is going to get a heck of a lot healthier as the season progresses. And I'm not making excuses with the injuries. I just think that's part of the conversation when you look at what transpired at Lincoln Financial Field here this evening. So, tough loss, 31-17. I got to know your one-word reaction to it. Now, our takeaways from the Week 7 Sunday Night Football loss against the Eagles. Way too many penalties. I start with it at the very top. And I don't want you to take this for me blaming the refs. That's not what this is. But way too many undisciplined penalties by the Dolphins, coupled with a few bad or missed calls by the referees. And it all transpires into 10 penalties on the Dolphins, 0 on the Eagles. The Dolphins were not disciplined tonight, and it showed. It was the worst output of the offense this entire season. So, tough one to swallow, and when you make matters worse by being heavily penalized in a game, you're not going to beat good teams. You're especially not going to beat good teams on the road. So, way too many penalties is my first takeaway. Second one, the offensive line just got a little bit beat up by this Eagles defensive line. It's one of the best defensive fronts in the National Football League. Fletcher Cox, Jalen Carter, the list goes on, and it was play after play that the Eagles defensive line were making the plays, and the Dolphins' offensive line were not. Now, they're a little bit banged up without Connor Williams. Isaiah Wynn left the game. He did return, but Lester Cotton had a few pre-snap penalties. And I'm not just blasting the Dolphins' offensive line as the only reason they lost this game, but again, it's certainly a part of the conversation. -7 rushing yards in the first half by this Dolphins offense. That's unheard of. Raheem Mostert, his worst game of the season, just nothing really going on the offensive end. Savon Ahmed was kind of your RB2, but you see the numbers there. It just was not happening. So, yes, it's a credit to this defense by the Philadelphia Eagles. They were a step faster, pound for pound stronger than what the Dolphins were able to muster up here tonight. So, but all that said, I'm pumped to tell you about Prize Picks. They're a proud presenting sponsor of Dolphins Today. And look, every NFL game I watch, I have to use Prize Picks because it's the most exciting way to play daily fantasy football. It's the most fun way, and it's super simple as well. So you don't need any complicated Excel spreadsheet or anything like that. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on a player's projected stat line, and you make your picks. Here were my picks for Sunday Night Football. Tyreek Hill had the touchdown. I had more. Credit there. Jaylen Waddle, 58.5 yards receiving. I picked more there. Jalen Hurts passing. And you know what? I picked less, but he went more there. So that's how fun it is. You got to try it. You're going to love it. I promise you that if you love football. And you can do it with more than just football. Where you got to go, prizepicks.com/CLNS. It's easy and exciting daily fantasy sports. I love it. You're going to love it again. And for being a Dolphins fan, Dolphins subscriber, we've got a $100 deposit match for you at prizepicks.com/CLNS. Now, we always make it easy on you. We put the link in the description as well as the comments. It's prizepicks.com/CLNS for a $100 deposit match. Don't waste any more time. Do it now. Do it today. $100 deposit match waiting for you at prizepicks.com/CLNS. Now, the defense gives up the 31 points. That's not great. They ran out of gas, but it wasn't necessarily a performance by the defense where you're going to look back on and say, our defense is a lost cause. They can't stop anybody, because the two takeaways kept the Dolphins in this game. One of them being the pick six where Kader Kohou tipped it at the line of scrimmage. Jerome Baker right there for the interception and taking it to the house. But at the end of the day, the Eagles made more plays on offense than the Dolphins defense. They got a little bit worn out. I mentioned the secondary, Eli Apple, Kader Kohou, and at times they looked a step short against the likes of A.J. Brown. Gave up some big passes there. He was over 100 yards, and Jalen Hurts was 23 of 31 for 279 yards. And you know what? There's going to be times where you're not at your best. This was an example of that. You're going to get Xavier Howard back. Jalen Ramsey is still progressing ahead of schedule from that injury and the knee surgery he had in the offseason. He's going to be an added boost. And I still think there's enough to not hit the panic button with this Dolphins defense. So 31-17, that's the final. Want you to grade the Dolphins' performance versus the Eagles. Now, again, it wasn't pretty. 10 penalties committed, undisciplined, some delay, pre-snap penalties, delay of games, turnovers committed. All of that factored in. I give them a C-. And when you're on the road against a really good team in the Eagles in a hostile environment, you can't play your C- game. That said, I don't think it's a representation of what this Dolphins team is capable of. I'm not panicked. Still a C- performance for me. Now, Dolphins Today, where you're going to find daily Dolphins content, watch parties like we had today, instant analysis and reaction, and a lot of fun raffles and giveaways. We do it all on Dolphins Today. That's why we're the biggest and most fun Dolphins community on YouTube. So don't waste any more time. You got to subscribe to the channel, Dolphins News, youtube.com/Dolphins News. Takes you right to our homepage where you can hit that subscribe button. And our goal is to get to 48K. We're so close. We only need a few more. I believe that we can get there. Now, last but certainly not least, I think all of these takeaways really funnel down to the bottom line, this was the offense's worst game. Tua did not look sharp. The offensive line was beat all game. And when there's no running game, Tua's under pressure. I got to check the final box score. I believe they had 3 sacks. And everything starts and ends with that offensive line. They didn't make enough plays, and it turns into be the worst output by the offense this season. So I don't know if it's one of those games you necessarily burn the tape and just move on, but next week against the Patriots, that's a get-right game. You got to bounce back. You're still in first place in the AFC East. Everything's still in front of you. This was a tough night on the road. That happens in the National Football League. You turn the page, you move on from it, and you learn from it. I believe the Dolphins will. So one more time, final score, Eagles 31, Dolphins 17. They lose, they being the Dolphins, to move to 5-2. Eagles 6-1 on the season. And unfortunately for the Dolphins, just not their night. But, hey, we'll see what the remaining schedule most recently or most soonest upcoming against the Patriots, followed by a game against the Chiefs. Then you're into the bye week. So Dolphins fall to 5-2, still in first place in the AFC East. The Eagles were the better team tonight on Sunday Night Football. And back to the drawing board a little bit, but you also got a lot of guys coming back to be healthy for the Dolphins. I'm not worried. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Shout out to producer Jack, and the Dolphins will look to turn the page. Be with us all week as we get you ready for the Dolphins' next game on Dolphins Today.